Good afternoon, good people. Hey, come on down, come on down. There's always room. There's always room in the SportsCrit Lab. I think there's a seat right there. You got it? Okay. Coming in late. Coming in late. Okay. All right, everybody. First and foremost, hello. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Dr. G, your SportsCrit cutie. I'm a professor of race, sport, and social justice. And I'm having a pretty good year. I want to share a little bit about what I do in my hashtag SportsCrit classroom. I like to lay the foundation with the principles of social justice. I also had the opportunity to share this in my Activism 101 class that I was a part of the inaugural, I guess you can say, season, semester, school year for Hillman Talk. Woo! Anyway, I had a good time. So, there's still some people coming. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So the goal for today, like I just said, is to share with the people what I do in my hashtag SportsCrit classroom. So our goal for today in our SportsCrit classroom is to lay the foundation for the principles of social justice. SportsCrit style. Here we go. All right. Now, one can assume, one can guess, ascertain, I would say that there are multiple principles of social justice. But because I am your SportsCrit cutie, Dr. G, I usually give examples from a systemic or societal standpoint. But then I go ahead and utilize either a sports example, and I try to do something that may be taking place right now. Okay. AKA ripped from the headlines. You hear me? Hit the rollie, start with the roll. So before I get into the specifics, the principles of social justice, I like to lay the foundation with a little bit of language so that all of my students are at the same baseline with the understanding of certain terms and terminology, etc. The first one is breaking down the difference between equality and equity. Can anyone in the audience guess, what do you think your definition of equality and equity is? Oh, wait, I'm a credentialed counselor, so I'm okay with a little bit of silence to contemplate what you're going to say. Oh, okay. So this young lady said, equality is everybody gets the same thing. And she's not quite sure with equity. Well, you get an A+ for the next 10 minutes because you're right. Equality means everyone, regardless of need, right, receives the same thing. That's it. Equity is an extra layer of that. Equity is giving everyone what they need depending on their need, giving them resources, opportunities, so that there can be at least a level playing field. All right. What do you mean by that? The example that I use in the real world is when COVID shut down. Ooh. So when COVID shut down the entire world, what I think being a part of education was really interesting to experience was that equality was taking place only in the sense that every student would receive a Chromebook or some sort of laptop so that they can receive their schooling from their teacher or professor online. I thought that was really cool for every student to have the opportunity to do that. However, equity comes in. Now, remember, we was all at the house and we were all getting on everybody's nerves because we were all together at the house and we really weren't quite sure when the end date would be and what that would be. And so, one, we was on top of each other, but two, since everybody's at the house, do you think the Wi-Fi is strong enough? No. I don't think everyone and their mama had files, right? And had opportunities to, have the highest of the speed. So what took place that a few school districts and even the university that I was a part of during COVID, that they offered jetpacks and Wi-Fi packs to students, to families that needed that. And what if there were families that just could not afford Wi-Fi? And so equity brings those families. Every family didn't need a Wi-Fi pack or a jet pack, but equity brings the families that resource that they need just so that they can even log on and have a level playing field. And justice, well, justice is fixing the system to offer equal and equitable access to both tools, resources, and opportunities. Am I making sense, good people? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Show of hands. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh. All right. So, what is social justice? What is social justice? I'll wait. I'll wait. Social justice. Now, this notion is extended to all context in life and society. But once again, I'm your SportsCrit cutie, so I'm gonna give you a sports context in just a few minutes. Sports and social justice, right? It strives to ensure that opportunities are distributed fairly as a broad of people as possible. Okay. North really broke down. There had to be two instances in order for social justice to take place. And one of that is a recognition of an injustice. Woo! You mean to tell me folks got to realize and they have to recognize that they have done wrong? That's the first one, a recognition of injustice. And that second piece that is just as important is the redistribution of resources and opportunities. Does that make sense? So I want you to think of things that have been taking place in society. Is social justice taking place when we talk about, certain topics or issues? Is there a recognition of injustice? And is there some sort of attempt to rectify, to reconcile, to redistribute these resources and opportunities? If so, social justice is taking place. We're heading in the right direction. System. I want to make sure that the people, the listeners, the viewers are understanding that in order to even begin to talk about the principles of social justice and injustice, is that we have to recognize that this is a systemic play. Okay. So, what I also like to do is I like to put up a very basic definition of a system. And so, Keisha will put that up in just a moment. But a system, and I like to define that as a set of principles or procedures, right, in which something is done. It's an organized framework, it's very intentional, and it's a method, a system, a system. Okay. And then I also like to tell the students, do not interrogate the person. We must interrogate the system in which the person is benefiting. Am I making sense? So let's do it. Principles of social justice. First and foremost, in no particular order, let's do it. You ready? The first one's equity, just like we said, fairness in processes and outcomes, addressing advantages, addressing disadvantages, I would say, or even addressing privileges. That is equity. What does this look like when it comes to activism, when it comes to SportsCrit, right? Fair treatment, equitable treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, right? When we think about Title IX, 1972. I'm here because of it, holding a microphone, talking about sports. What? Okay. Adaptive sports programs. At my university, we have something called the Motor Development Clinic that is ran by two of my favorite people. And they just wear equity on their sleeve, man. I dig these broads. I really do. And so this is an adaptive sports clinic in which many of my students have they're doing their field work or their internships because they want to work with kids and adults and individuals with special needs, right? Whether if it's physical or mental. And that's a beautiful example of that. What about the gender pay gap in certain sports? What the women's U.S. soccer team has done in recent years was the most chef's kiss. Beautiful ways in which equity, was in play. The next principle of social justice that I will be sharing with the people is access. So this is an interesting concept because when we're talking about access, it could be very multi-layered, right? It could be, geographical access, economic, physical, cultural. And so those four even types of access can bring about a wealth of information, and can really be disaggregated like with data, with experiences, etc. But the main goal and the main objective of access is to ensure that everyone has equal access to essential services, right? And resources like education. Education is freedom. Okay. Access, got to get you in the door, baby. Okay. Ensuring everyone has access, right, to resources, education, healthcare, and employment. And as we see what's taking place right now in society, things are not accessible for a very large groups of people. So access, right? It's about breaking down systemic barriers that prevent full participation in society. So one of my students, they usually do, I depending on the semester, I just have fun. I just like, okay, I think we'll do this semester. But one of the semesters in my kin 4430, which is inequalities in health and human movement, the students created an accessible sports facility. And so they made sure things were ADA compliable. I mean, it was really cool. And yeah, my students are dope. But access, 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 access. That is principle number 2. Is everybody with me? Is everybody with me? Is everybody with me? I've got another example, actually. When we talk about urban versus rural disparities in a sports infrastructure, just as I talked about, the student that they created their own sports facility, sports program, etc. Dark deserts, park deserts. What does that look like? That means different cities, neighborhoods, towns that there's no parks, there's no basketball hoops, there's no tennis courts, right? So how can a child that may be gifted and blessed with the opportunity to play basketball, to play tennis, to play volleyball, but there's no parks around, right? Language barriers and coaching, lack of adaptive equipment for folks with disabilities, whether physical or mental. And then lastly, when we talk about access, good people, what about the cost? What about the cost of sports? Okay. Um, Rugby, how much? Keisha, throw it up there. How much is the average price for a student, for a child to engage in rugby? Keisha, how much is that? Okay, so we're gonna throw this up on the court. Me thinking about basketball all the time. Um, what about hockey? Who? Who? And golf? Who? Right? Badminton? Yo, my old high school, they was eating people up in badminton. They was recruiting folks. I don't even anyway. Badminton. What about even volleyball? These club teams, soccer, these club teams. My babies is there. They're in the soccer age, and I gotta tell you, I'm not trying to wake up at 6 on a Saturday. So y'all pray for me, because I mean, if Austin wants to play, he gonna play it. But I mean, I'm gonna have to like paper, rock, scissors. You know what I mean? Next, the next principle of social justice and injustice is diversity and inclusion. So, diversity is who is in the room. Diversity is recognizing and celebrating differences. Okay. Can you imagine if everybody looked the same, think the same, dress the same, talk the same? Oh God, life would be hella boring. As a matter of fact, this weekend, one of my niecey poos graduated high school. She's going to college. So proud of her. Not going too far, so she's going to Northridge, right? And one of the friends that was there, one of my girlfriend's hubby's friends. When I tell you, I had to clutch my pearls, and I was just enamored. I'm not quite sure if he was fully Caucasian or what. But when I tell you he sounded like Paul Wall, and it wasn't anything that he was just like, okay, let me put on because there's hella black people. No, this man was like, hey, little girl, come over here. She's talking to his daughter. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Hey, little girl, don't be eating that, little girl. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about his background. It's fascinating. He's a good man, Savannah, right? And so these are things that the diversity, if he was just some regular cat, just some regular physical therapist, I'd be like, oh, nice to meet you. Bye. But boy, did he have some really cool things to say. And that's why diversity is important. Who is in the room? You cannot be what you cannot see. So let's move on. We talked about the who's in the room, diversity. Now let's get to inclusion. That's the next principle. Not only is it important to have who's in the room, but how are their voices being included at the table? I, for one, have been a part of situations where I was at the table, but they wasn't trying to hear me say shit. You understand what I'm saying? They wanted me to just be cheekbones and charm and not say nothing. Well, y'all should know me. That shit didn't fly. And well, I made my presence known because I was at the table and I deserve to be there. You deserve to be at the table. Don't let no one tell you otherwise. You understand what I'm trying to say to you? How are their voices included at the table? It's about creating welcoming environments. You can't be what you can't see, right? Yeah, you're sitting at the table, but who's checking for you? Who's asking you, Dr. G, what are your thoughts on this? Since you are an expert, since you are the only one in the department that's written a book, ensuring all voices are heard. That's for a whole nother story that I have to tell you about that. But for the sake of time and pettiness, we'll move forward. What about a sports crit lens? What does that look like? Leadership positions. Okay. My students are going to do a content analysis on the coaches of professional leagues and the different dynamics, the different demographics, and what does that look like. So they're going to do an analysis of leadership positions in sports. And it's up to them to decide whether if they want to examine college, professional, or even high school, depending on the sport when it comes to diversity and leadership and inclusion, right? Culturally inclusive programs, despite what the government is trying to do, culturally relevant programming is necessary. And it won't be stopped. Let me tell you something. We are in the civil rights movement 2.0. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? The ways in which all of the legislations, all of the policies, all of the laws that were passed in the 60s, this current administration is actively dismantling that. Why? Why? Because they know when you're at the table, shit's going to get real. And so they rather have everybody look the same, sound the same, think the same, because that's very mediocre and it's very on brand. And so we cannot stop and we won't stop. The ways in which folks organized and communicated, there was no social media, there was no Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, because I'm never going to say X. But that's how strategic we have to be. Inclusion is important. You cannot be what you can't see. And these are just a few examples. So I have a question for you. How can sports organizations, sports environments, sports ecosystem, how can they truly create inclusive environments? That's your homework. Well, the state of racial and gender diversity in various sections, there still needs to be a lot of strategies, mentorship programs, inclusive hiring practices, and really addressing unconscious bias. The next principle that we have, good people, is participation. Participation, right? Everyone deserves the opportunity to be involved in community and civic life. Everyone should have the opportunity, the access to participate. It's about, just being an active role in society. Now, does everyone get to participate? Class, does everyone get to participate? And that's a big fat hell no, Dr. G. You're goddamn right. Participation is about engaging in community, But when there are barriers and boundaries around that, it's very, very difficult for participation and rights to be bestowed on everyone. It's an empowerment to shape society. And so everyone deserves the right for access to participate, right? To even know that there are places in which they can feel seen in every aspect. It's fundamental. And the next fundamental is rights, particularly human rights. It's a fundamental right for all. And as you can see, that this administration is trying to actively remove human rights by deeming who is human or not, trying to take dignity, freedom, and equality. We have got to continue to fight. Everyone deserves the right to live, the right for access, participation. They have the right to see themselves in leadership, and they have the right to be a leader themselves. How access, equity, diversity, and rights interact. I have my students ask them this question: how might these principles apply across different contexts, right? How might these differences apply across the sports context? How might these differences apply in education? Does every student have the same rights depending on where they live, depending on their race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, immigration status? And so that is where the intersectionality of principles of social justice and injustice can not only be means for triumph, but right now they are really trying to utilize these principles of injustice to silence us. I, for one, will not go down. I will not go down without a fight, and you will not either.